JP,
What's happening, Miss Ashby?
how we doing on this Thursday night?
It's been a long week. I don't know about you, but it's been a long week for me. It's
It's been I would agree. It's been our finals week, so got one more thing to turn in, then done for the year.
yeah, I don't envy you having to take finals. You've definitely had the worst week than I have.
No, not at all. It's kind of I'm at a point now where I don't actually go and take a lot of exams at this point. It's kind of just the amount of papers I've written in the last few days. I feel like all of like the words I'm writing are just kind of going in together. So,
Oh, I know that feeling.
you
I know
know
that
that
feeling.
better than anybody else.
I do know that feeling.
Oh my goodness. But it's been a good week. We're back to our regularly scheduled programming here on Thursday. I had all my days mixed up. I was like, "Oh my goodness, tomorrow's the podcast. This was yesterday." I'm real out of it, but we're back.
I tell you, those Thursday, Friday, Saturday series just throw everything out of whack, and I've been all out of whack the last 2 weeks. Hopefully, we're back to from. I know the schedule's back to normal. Hopefully, my mind can get back in the right time frame too.
Yeah, I think we should take it up with whoever schedules those games that it's not convenient for us, and ask them to change it. I think it would
Yeah,
work.
yeah. I can tell you a story about how little they care about media from this past weekend.
Oh
Oh, I
man,
will never ever go back to the North Carolina State for a baseball series ever again, ever.
really? Was this your first one?
No, yeah, for baseball. Yeah, I've never covered a baseball game there until this weekend, and first time, last time, it was that bad. Yeah, it
JP,
was
I've
that
never
bad.
heard you speak about an event like this.
I've never experienced what I have to tell you about later. I've never experienced what I experienced there this weekend. So it started. I'll tell you this way. It started. I went to the Friday game, Saturday game, Friday. I was it was me and another guy who kind of covers the ACC for a different site, and um, he wanted to talk to Eric Baggage post game just like I did, and we had no idea how to get down to because when you're doing a away game, they don't take you in. You don't go into the facility. You got to go down there on the field. Well, North Carolina State, unlike every other ballpark I've ever been to, you can't get on the field right there by the dugouts. There's no way
There's
to
no way
do
to
it.
walk down.
No, they're doing I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but they're doing renovations there. But there's no, usually there's a little hole in the netting you can open up and get through there. Not in Raleigh. Nobody told us how to get down there. We spent probably 10 minutes post game looking for the way down there, and somebody finally walked us through the North Carolina State Cup clubhouse. And I think there were some people in there that weren't happy about that. Um,
Did you miss Coach Backage? Usually, I feel like they're out of there pretty quick with a
they
loss.
were at it. We caught him leaving the dugout on the way to the bus. So I mean, we almost did miss him. And the only way onto that field is all the way down in the left field corner. You have to go out of the stadium, come back in, and go in the outfield down there, which we knew the next day. But man,
So did you have to look around?
we almost missed him,
Oh wow.
and that was just the beginning of it. I'll have to tell you the rest later. I mean, that by itself would have been fine. I mean, there wasn't a lot of media people there. I you know, I don't know if you've ever covered Clemson on the road, but usually as soon as the game ends, the Clemson SID, he's up and out of there and he's gone. And if you're fast enough, you can follow him, but not fast enough that day. And there was nobody from the North Carolina State side that was even in the press box to tell us. They got two different press boxes, one for their staff and one for the media, and it was just. But the next day took the cake, and it was an experience.
The drama. I don't know that I've ever heard you speak about drama in this way.
It, it was it wasn't so much drama as they did not care about the media that last game, man. They did not care at all.
Listen, that'll make you two things. Number one, that'll add on to what was already a rough weekend. Just really pile it on thick. Number two, that'll make you really grateful for some Clemson home games that we have coming up next week.
There's only 3 home games left, though.
I know. It's so crazy. It feels like we had home games all the time for every 2 minutes. And now this has felt like, and we'll get into it in a second, but it's felt like the longest week without baseball coming off of what just happened and no midweek game and the series ended on Saturday. This has been a long waiting period.
And I don't even think, talking to Coach Backett after the game Saturday, it sounded like they weren't even going to practice again until Wednesday because of
So
finals.
it's probably been a long week for them as well.
Yeah, which he said he was hoping was going to be a good thing. It gets them away from baseball for a little bit, and get away from what happened in Raleigh, let some of the bumps and bruises heal up and those kind of things, maybe come back refocused, recentered, and most importantly, refreshed.
Well, we'll get into all of what happened in Raleigh, talk about this coming weekend. But before we get started, want to go ahead and thank our sponsor, Shorty and Goose's Driving School, your one-stop driving shop. They have many years of experience and pride themselves on being a small family business rather than just a business. They offer everything, including permit testing, first-time driver's training courses, driver's license testing, and defensive driving courses to lower insurance costs and point reductions. Call or text Freddie at 843-495-0741 to find out how Freddie and Liz can help you. JP, we were talking about it a little bit beforehand, but you and I both can't see. And JP's rocking the glasses tonight, everyone. And every time I read that number, it's in yellow on my phone. I really have to work for it.
We're both blind as bats, so y'all have to forgive us.
JP can tell you there was a phase where I was missing a whole side of my glasses as well. Yep. It was a good look. I had it taped at press conferences.
It was taped up there.
Oh, yeah. Don't you want to answer questions from that reporter? I would. Oh, man. Well, JP, I'm not going to flex on you, and I'm not going to flex on anyone, but last weekend I did predict a sweep. I didn't specify who was going to sweep who. Got that part wrong. But I did say that I did go 0 for 3. And the Clemson Tigers lost their first series of the season and were also swept for the first time in Raleigh, as we kind of mentioned. Starting from the beginning, when did you kind of feel like this wasn't going to be the weekend? It wasn't going to be the night on Friday or on Thursday? What was going through your head?
I predicted them to win 2 out of 3 too. Not sweep, but win 2 out of 3. And if everybody remembers, I picked them to lose 2 out of 3 to Louisville. I just had this feeling it was just a week too soon. And then after they beat Louisville, I kind of get sucked back into believing. And it started almost instantly, though. I've never seen Aiden Knox get knocked around the way he did in that first game. And I got a text from our boss Thursday night talking about how you're going to go up there and watch them get swept. I mean, it was, pretty quick. And I don't think Knox really pitched all that terribly. I think they just hit him. They stayed down on some of those change-ups and just drove them. You could tell he was a little frustrated. I think a lot of the hitters are getting a little frustrated. When you're talking about, I think they're like 6 for their last 56 now with runners in scoring position. I know they were 6 for 50 coming into the last game. So whatever they were in that last game, which was a 0 for, that would make them 6 for whatever. Now 6 for 50 something. I think 6 for, let's see, I got it right here. Okay, 6 for 55 because they were 0 for 5 in the last one. So they're now 6 of their last 55. They had one base hit all weekend with runners in scoring position. That came in the opener. So they were hitless in the final 2 games. I just think you're starting to see a lot of frustration, and I see a lot of shade getting thrown at the pitching. But I think outside of Canuck or outside of the game, the series opener, I think the pitching was plenty good enough in the final 2 games. especially in the finale when Bailey, holds them down. They only score 4 runs the whole game, and 3 of those came after the 5th. It's the hitting that this team's really struggling with. I think they got exposed a little bit this weekend. They've had the approach at the plate where they've been very patient. They're taking their walks and they get on base and they're able to manufacture runs that way, take advantage of some fielding miscues. Well, North Carolina State pitchers didn't hardly walk guys this weekend. They played fantastic defense. They made Clemson have to earn everything they got, and they weren't able to earn anything. I mean, anything. It was hard to watch at times, man. And the further you got into that thing, I think the more frustrated or more frustration you started to see at the plate, guys starting to press some. Even Bakich me said after the game 2 loss, he thought maybe some guys might be starting to press, but it was definitely hard to watch. When you're 1 for 21 or 22 or whatever it was the weekend with runners in scoring position, that kind of tells the tale.
I think it's hard to be successful anytime you're 1 for 22 or what do you say, 6 for 56 and
6 for 55, 6 for the last 55. That goes back to the game 3 loss against Louisville because they were 3 for 22 that day.
Number one, the fact that you have runners in scoring position that many times should be a good sign, right? But then it's the bigger issue of, oh goodness, we're not executing like we should be. And kind of going back to what you were saying about the pitching outside of Knock, who, gave up 11 hits, 8 runs with 1 walk and 2 strikeouts, BJ Bailey was good enough to win that game. If you're only giving up, 3 runs in 6 innings? That should be good enough to give your team a chance. It really should. And I think it was also frustrating to watch lots of positive things happen in the first inning each game. I think going into this, when Clemson scored in the first inning or first couple innings, they were close to undefeated this season. And so I think the fact that we started off with that momentum and then could do nothing with it for several innings, I think that was tough also. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Clemson's 20-4 when they score in the first inning. And I think they scored in the first inning twice this weekend, if I'm remembering right.
It was 2 or 3.
In fact, I can say they scored. Let's see, they scored twice in the first inning in game 1. They didn't score to the second inning in game 2, and then they hit the home run in game 1, inning 1 of the last game. So that's 2 out of the 3 games, lost both of them. They scored first in all 3 games. So that's another area in which they've really excelled at. Again, I just think that they got exposed. Again, I don't think the pitching was terrible. You had the one bad outing from Wentworth there in game 2 where he's been pretty good when they've called on him this year. And in some high leverage situations, he didn't have it that day, and that allowed NC State I think they got him for 3 runs, and that extended that game. It ended up being 8-4, but I mean that game was probably closer than the final score indicates. But it's just what we're seeing at the plate. The strikeouts are starting to pile up, and this is a team that wasn't striking out a ton, over the first half of the season. They started to do so a little bit more over the past couple of weeks, and they really started to pile up over the weekend, man. That North Carolina State, they didn't even need their closer until the final inning of the final game. He came in and he didn't throw one fastball. He threw all sliders. A couple of them hit 89. I mean, they were nasty, don't get me wrong, but he didn't even need a fastball to sit them down in order. It's kind of one of those things where you hope they can just flush it and forget about it and move on to this weekend, because that's a big game. A big series they've got coming up this weekend, and we already know this team's not going to be one of the best hitting teams in the country. They're not going to hit a ton of home runs, but they got to get back to, finding some ways to manufacture some runs and get back to being that gritty, scrappy team that was stacking wins before this weekend.
We've talked about this since one of the first episodes, and that's we don't think that they're going to have the kind of home run power that they did last year. And it has improved, but it's looked to me a little bit like a lot of guys are looking for the home run because that is the offense that they were able to get this weekend. Like, how many solo shots did we see and have we seen in the past couple weeks? And I think it's really tampered with what made this team so good in the first several weeks and several weeks of ACC play is that it feels like sometimes instead of trying to draw a walk or make the right play or whatever, it feels like it's out of whack. Do you think that's a contagious thing? Like when everybody's struggling, is it because we talk about, hitting being contagious and, home runs coming in bunches and all these things. Do you think it's the same way with the strikeouts and with the ground outs and all that?
I think it can be, absolutely. Particularly once it gets to the point that it got to over the weekend, where you just couldn't do anything with runners in scoring position. And I do think there are, let's say, one or two guys in that lineup that go up there trying to yank it most times. But I don't think all of them do that. I think there are certain situations, certain counts where you might see them try to put something into one. But, I just think that North Carolina State had a great game plan. I think they executed it almost to perfection. Um, you know, if the opposing pitchers are throwing strikes, you can't stand up there and take walks. You've got to put the ball in play. And I mean, I think it was game 2, the first game I was at, Friday. Clemson had a bunch of balls that were hit 100 mile an hour or over off the bat, but for outs. North Carolina State had some that were hit below 80 for hits. That the Fraseman guy who just killed Clemson all weekend. He was the ACC Player of the Week, actually. He was
rightfully so.
Yeah, 5 for 5 that first night with 7 RBIs. He was responsible for more runs than the whole team. He hit one off the bat 78 miles an hour, and it falls right there in left field. Nobody can get to it. So, it just goes to show you how crazy of a sport baseball can be sometimes. But that was in game 2. I don't know about it. Didn't feel like there were very many in the finale that were hit that hard. It felt like most of them that were hit were just weak ground balls or weak fly balls. I wasn't sitting in the press box to get to find out how hard they were hit off the bat. Clemson only had 5 hits that day, struck out 8 times, left 6 guys on base. They didn't even put a lot of guys on base, period. If they would have drawn some walks that day, the numbers with runners in scoring position probably would have been a lot worse than 0 for 5. But, I guess it lends a little credence to what you're saying here about it being contagious, because I thought there were some hard hit balls in game 2, but there weren't very many in game 3.
So you look at this team, and they've had a really successful season. You're ranked 3rd in the country, but you're, I think, 5th in ACC play at this point, going into a really tough Florida State series. Who do you think are going to need to be the leaders to step up, pull this team out of the funk? Do you think that comes from Coach Bakich and staff? Do you think that comes from players? Do you think that comes from anyone? What do you think?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think first and foremost you need a guy like, and I know he's only a sophomore, but he seems a lot wiser than that, or wise for his years or whatever. Is Canuck. I think he might be one of those guys that some of them lean on. I think Chufo's another one. To me, those would be 2 right off the top of my head. But I think it kind of starts with Canuck on Friday. On Friday. We saw what happened when he did not have a great performance in game 1 this past weekend. It just
set the tone.
Yeah, the whole week it set the whole tone. You said it. Set the tone for the whole entire weekend, and they got dominated in every aspect. So I think I think first and foremost, it's up to him to come out and set the tone Friday, and what's probably going to be arguably the best pitching matchup we see this weekend between him and Jamie Arnold from Florida State, who's one of the best pitchers in the country. Um, so I think it kind of we're at a point now where you got to get you need at least close to your Friday guys' best performance, each and every week from here on out, because we're at that point in the season where every series matters. You talked about where they are in the ACC standings. They're sitting at ninth in the RPI, or excuse me, I think they're eighth in the RPI today, which is right on that line when you start talking about national seeding. You want one of those top 8 seeds, and while all the publications are still projecting them for a national top 8 seed, that RPI, it's right there at number 8. This is a series they need to win this weekend. If they're going to lose another series between now and the end of the regular season, it doesn't need to be this one. This is the one they need to win.
We talked about Connacht setting the tone for kind of the whole weekend and having, I think his worst outing of his collegiate career. I feel fully confident that he's not going to have an outing like that again. I really don't think so. I think you're going to see – I would not be surprised if that game was super low scoring. But you know what? Crazier things have happened. I'm not sure. Maybe we break out of the slump against Jamie Arnold. I don't know. But I think a question I have is, how sold are you on Saturday starter? Do you still like Titsworth in that starting role? Do you want to see him come out of the bullpen? And you think Talon Bell has a chance to be a starter this weekend?
I would be very surprised if Talon Bell starts this weekend. I think you'll probably see Titsworth get another opportunity. And I thought he was fine. I thought they left him in maybe a tad too long. And he ended up getting hit around a little bit there at the end. But they've already announced Titsworth's the starter on Saturday. They've done that since we've started this. So that email came out just a few minutes ago. They didn't announce Sunday's starter because you never know. They might decide to go with an opener again. But, I'm okay with Titsworth starting right now. You got a midweek game.
It's not even his performance. He was fine. It's just, do you need somebody else to be able to come in if somebody gets shelled?
You got another midweek game and I know midweek games aren't nearly as important as weekend series are, but you're going to Coastal. That's another top 15 RPI team. That's another
they beat you.
They beat you. They beat you pretty good at your place earlier in the year.
8-2 at home.
Don't get me wrong. The emphasis is going to be placed on winning that series at all costs this weekend. But if at all possible, you'd like to have Bell to start that game Tuesday. Now after that, we'll see what happens, man, because he was lights out against Georgia, in his last start. He was lights out, and that midweek game Tuesday will be the last one. But when Bakich, I was talking to Bakich about Michael Gillen's debut, which kind of got overlooked.
Sure.
With them getting swept. And when he started talking, he mentioned Talon Bell too, and talked about how both those guys would be valuable bullpen pieces going down the stretch. And that kind of gives you a little insight into how he views it.
So let's talk about that. We've been talking about Michael Gillen coming back forever. I didn't even believe he was real as a human being until this weekend, to be honest with you.
I think a lot of people felt that way.
JP's imaginary friend at this point. But first outing, kind of like you said, got overshadowed. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really good. I know he gave up a hit and hit a guy. I don't care. The hit was kind of fluky. It went off Purify's glove and trickles into right field. And the guy, instead of getting a single, the guy gets a double out of it. He hits the next guy. But guess what? He comes right back, works out of the jam. It was the only inning in that opener that a pitcher held North Carolina State scoreless. He threw 14 pitches, 11 were strikes. His fastball is not up to what it's been at previously in his career, so he's still kind of working on getting that velocity back. But his slider looked pretty good.
Where was his fastball sitting at?
91, 92. He usually throws closer to 94. I can't remember if he actually hit 93. He's usually 94, 95, but it was a little bit off. Even Eric Backett said it was his velo. He's still working on getting his velo back. Because I said something to Backett after the guy said, kind of lost in all this. Gillen makes his debut and has a pretty good inning. He said, well, he gives up a hit and hits a guy. I don't know if I'd call that pretty good. He's kind of laughing, but still, he puts the two guys on base, works right out of it. 11 of the 14 pitches were strikes. So he was pounding the strike zone. That's what they want him to do. I thought it was an excellent first step in what's probably going to be a few baby steps between now and the end of the regular season. You can get him dialed in by the time the ACC tournament, regional play rolls around. To me, that would be best case scenario because you can tell by how they've handled Talon Bell, how they've handled Brendan Bennett, how they've handled some of these other guys when they're just dealing with some soreness. They're going to be very cautious. They're going to take it slow. They're not going to work him back in fast. So I do think it was a good first step, probably a baby step, and the first of a few baby steps we'll see over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
And it's not like he came in a situation that was, very low stakes. You're playing a team that's been killing your ace, and here you go. Here's your first appearance at Clemson. And I think, honestly, to be able to work out of a jam in that kind of environment, in a away environment, says a lot about his potential. And he's only a junior, right? So he has a year, maybe multiple years to come. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it was already 10-4 when he came in. Canuck had gotten hammered. Samo had walked 2 guys in 2/3 of the inning. Dvorsky had, I think, given up a long ball, and then they went to Gillen. And again, it was the only scoreless inning a Clemson pitcher threw that night. I know, and LeGuernick and Samo didn't even pitch full innings and gave up runs. So he was the only guy to hold them scoreless in an appearance that night. Trying to find the positives.
Well, another positive, Colin Priest had a pretty good weekend. Continues to keep it rolling. I need to go back and look and see how far his home run was.
455.
Crushed it. Of course.
My man's got it right here.
Yep. There we go. Goodness gracious. The sound of that off the bat, I was like, oh my goodness. You just know sometimes,
Oh man, that ball was hammered. Absolutely hammered. And he had, he quietly had a decent weekend. He was 1 for 3 in the opener with 2 RBIs. He was 1 for 4 with an RBI in the second game, and he was 1 for 4 in the finale. No RBIs that day, but of the Clemson hitters, he probably had the best weekend of the bunch. He hits a couple of home runs, and he did hit 2, right? I think he hit 2 this weekend. Yeah. For a team that was very quiet at the plate this weekend because nobody else did much of anything at all. I know Gerald had the 1 home run, but just not a lot of offense this weekend. But his what you keep seeing from him, he keeps trending in the right direction. He's got that average. It's right up close to 270 now. He has, golly, how many home runs he have now? Excuse me. I'm looking at the wrong. Yeah, he's got 10.
Oh.
He's got 10. Gerald's got 11. So, I mean, he's kind of on track to where I thought he'd be. Him and Gerald both, they're the only ones, really. But as far as power goes, but that's kind of about what I expected out of him. 275, somewhere between 10, 15 home runs, and he looks like he's on pace to do that. But it's good to see him finally starting to get it going.
I think that it's a great sign but I'm looking for some other great signs from some other guys, and I really hope that this could. I don't know. You talked about Coach Backett giving them however many days off. Maybe that's helpful for somebody that's been struggling. I don't know. We'll see. When did they have they already left to go down there?
They left today, this afternoon. So they have already left for Tallahassee. They're probably already there by now. And you talk about some other guys that need to get it going on. Um, Probably first and foremost, that would be Cam Canarella, right? He's all the way down to 300. I mean, if he goes out there tomorrow and he doesn't reach in his first at bat and he gets, he flies out or grounds out, he's going to be under 300 for the might be
First
the
time
first
ever.
time in his career. Definitely the first time, once you
This
get
deep
into
in
the
the
season
season.
a little bit. Um, it's been talking about a guy that looks like he's getting frustrated at the plate. I definitely think he's one of them. You can he's one of those guys that wears his emotions on his sleeves. You can kind of see it in his body language and those kind of things. Um, but he's the one that they really need to start. They need for him to find his stroke. Purify's kind of been, all of them kind of struggled mostly this weekend. So I don't want to really single anybody out, but Canarella is the one that they really need to get it turned around because, again, his average has dropped like 20, 30 points in the past 2, 3 weeks, and that's just, it's hard to see with a guy that that with how much talent he's got and how good of a hitter he is, and it just goes to show you again, baseball is a funny sport, man. Anybody can go through a slump, and anybody can go through an extended slump, even the best of hitters. And Canarella's living proof of that right now.
Well, he's one of the at this point longest tenured people on this Clemson team, if you think about it. He's a junior that's been at Clemson since the start. You have guys with a lot of experience, but not all of them have been Clemson Tigers since the beginning, right? Cam's the best player on this team. At some point, everybody is going to be looking to him on that team, and that's a harsh reality because you hope somebody else can get going. But at some point, I think a lot of the leadership and I think a lot of turning around starts with him.
I do too. Like you said, at some point, and some of that's probably already started. Guys are going to look to him to kind of lead the way. He is outside of Jacob Jarrell. He's the elder statesman on this team. Been here the longest. Jarrell's the only one been here longer of the everyday guys, anyways. So I think you put it perfectly. At some point, you feel like he's got to turn it around. And at some point, you feel like he will. He's just too good to stay in an extended slump for that length of time. We'll see if he does it this weekend. His on base percentage is down to 451. It's been up around 500 for a lot of the season, even though his average has been down a little bit lower than what we're accustomed to. But he's definitely one that they need to get it going. Listy's kind of been struggling along. Same for Purify too. I mean, although he's Purify's got the highest batting average right now at 311.
Is he the only guy above 300 right now?
I was fixing to say that's hit, and Cam's at 300 on the dot, but the next highest guy is 286, and that's Listy. Although, to be fair, his on base is still 509, so he's getting on base. But yeah, I think it's safe to assume this team's not hit the way most would have envisioned in the preseason.
I would love to know when the last time. I don't think it's been in the last 2 years. Probably before that there have only been 2 guys hitting above 300 on this team.
You could probably have to go back a little ways.
I need to go do that research and see.
You might have to go back to the Monty days.
It's
that would be me, I guess.
I will be interested to see though. I don't know the last time Clemson got swept. I don't think they saw this coming at all. I think this is a moment for Coach Backus to show how good of a coach he is, because I truly believe he's one of the best out there.
this, I don't want to make it sound like we're all over here hitting the panic button or anything.
No,
Clemson's been swept. They were swept last year. They were swept the year before that. Wake Forest swept them both years.
it happens to
So
the best of us. It really does.
exactly. They've been swept at least once every year under Backich. It's like he said the other day. He said it himself, we didn't expect to go wire to wire and win every series. So
That's
we
not
hope
realistic.
to, but we didn't expect to. The schedule's too tough. There's just too many things that could happen. It's a long season. And sure enough, they went up there and they caught North Carolina State, like he says, on a heater. They are absolutely rolling right now. Um, Pitching, fielding, hitting. I mean, they're just on fire. And Clemson kind of ran into a buzzsaw. We'll see what happens in Tallahassee this weekend. Florida State also lost their weekend series at Louisville, a team Clemson took 2 out of 3 from 2 weeks ago. So it's a big one for sure. You need it for the ACC standings because you want to draw one of those top 4 seeds in the tournament. And right now you're on the outside looking in when it comes to that. And then, like we talked about earlier, one of those national seeds. But it's definitely a big one for sure. I think Clemson's a pretty solid lock to host a regional no matter what happens, but they're far from a locked up to be a top 8 seed. There's still work to do there, and that starts this weekend.
Outside of the obvious, leaving runners on base, not getting hits when people are in scoring position, what do you think are the specific keys going against Florida State to win this series?
I think one of the biggest keys is coming out and setting the tone Friday in game 1. If you drop that game for whatever reason, or Connaught gets hit around a little bit again, and you drop that game, I mean, it's just like a snowball that's rolling down the hill, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. You want to put this fire out right now. So I think coming out and setting the tone, in game 1 Friday is imperative. I think they need to get off to a pretty decent start at the plate, not go hitless through the first 3 innings. It'd be, perfect world. You'd see Listy lead it off with a hit or a walk, and follow him up, with a liner into the gap or an opposite field home run or whatever. That'd be a perfect thing. But you need Aiden to set the tone, and you need the offense to come out, and get some hits early in that thing and kind of get the confidence turned around a little bit, get some good mojo going rather than that snowball just keep rolling downhill and building in size, because the longer you let it roll, the harder it is going to be able to come out of that funk.
I think they turn it around. I think Aiden's too good to have 2 bad weekends in a row. I think the Tigers get out of there, the series win. I'm not predicting a sweep, better believe, because I think I jinx it. But I think Tigers win 2-1 and come back home after this road trip with some momentum. What about you?
You know what? Every fiber of my being is telling me to pick Florida State here. But I'm not going to, because I've just been around this team enough since Backich has been here. I have that much confidence in him to push the right buttons, do what needs to be done, and if there's a tweak to be made in the lineup, to do it or whatever. There's not a ton you can do at this point, but I think more of it's motivational than anything. But I just think if there's a guy there that can help get these guys turned around, it's him. Sometimes you listen to him talk, you're ready to go run through a brick wall like you would be for a football coach, right? I think they're going to win game 1. I think Connaught's going to get the better of Jamie Arnold. And if you're not familiar with him, the guy's got a 2.39 ERA and 49 innings pitched. His whip is 0.96, which is elite. He's got 68 strikeouts and just 16 walks in 49 innings. He's a left-hander. He's one of the top left-handers in the country. So I'm with you. I'm thinking it's going to be a low-scoring affair. But I think Clemson takes game 1, and I think they'll lose game 2, and I think B.J. Bailey will guide them to a win in the finale. And you take 2 out of 3, and we're having much different conversations here a week from today.
Regardless of what happens, we're having different conversations. Well, JP, I look forward to chatting about this next week, next Thursday, the same time, and getting the Tigers home for the Duke series after that. You're going to the Coastal game on Tuesday, is that right?
That's the plan as of right now, anyways, barring something unforeseen. I've not missed a game in Coastal. I can't remember the last time I didn't go to it. So I would probably be there, yes.
They've got you covered. They'll let you get down to the field after.
And I'll be in the press box.
Okay. Well, JP, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate it. Make sure that you follow the Clemson Insider for all your Clemson sports coverage. Like and subscribe. What did I say? Yes. And also thank you to Shorty and Goose's Driving School for helping us put on this show. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, JP.
Appreciate it, Ashby.